So the way I see it, America is kind of going through a little bit of a crisis right now. This might be kind of an obvious video, but I'm just going to make this video anyway. So what's going on with Detroit is not really the problem we're having right now, but it will be our problem in a couple of years. So the question is, what is an old car? And basically, in America, we're used to having old cars around. And what's that mean? So like, this car right here is 100% mechanical, front to back. If you need anything with the fuel system, it's all mechanical. It's a pump, it's lines, it's a pickup in the back, and a carburetor. And that's all you got. And then, you know, what's wrong with it? It's probably either the carburetor or the fuel filter clogged, like one of the two. And you kind of just have that as an old car. And it's been this way for like 100 years, okay? And so with this car, if you want to, if you have a problem with the ignition, literally what's under the cap, you can buy for like change that you can find in your laundry. Like, what's a points cost? Like, points cost like $2, right? A condenser. On this one, a coil is probably like a higher dollar item in the ignition system. But this car is kind of becoming like obsolete for people. Like, you don't see anybody commuting anymore in an old car. You used to, like in the 90s, the 2000s, I remember seeing like four-door Cornettes and stuff like that. And it was some old lady's car, you know, and I asked about it, inquire, you know, and oh, she'll never sell it. She bought the thing brand new, you know. So you had like people still driving them. And you might still have people driving cars from the 80s they bought brand new and stuff, but typically, like, this car is becoming, you only have it if you're into it. It's almost like a Model A, okay? Because in the 60s, like, there were still Model A's around, but, like, nobody drove them, right? It's kind of like how it is now. It's like, you only have this car if this is what you want. You don't just have this car and you're driving it. Not quite. It's kind of like on the cusp of it, you know? So the problem with it is that this is typically the old car in America, but it's not the old car anymore. The problem is this is the old car. This car and other cars like it. This is a 1998. So when I was screwing around with my Charger in the 90s, my Charger was already like 25 years old and it was an old car. This thing is like 25, whatever it is, years old. And this is what we got to deal with. So the problem with these cars is they're full of sensors and electronics. And this model isn't that bad. So the old car of right now, today, that people will typically drive, doesn't have too many sensors, but you're probably looking at an OBD2. OBD1s you don't see on the road too often. Not anymore, not really. So the OBD2 car is kind of like the old car now. And, well, let me just tell you what I've had to do with this car and the reason why it should be in the junkyard. Okay, so literally only a mechanic would have saved this car. I've had to, in the last few months, replace the PCM, and it took about 3 PCMs to get one that actually worked. I had a couple duds. They worked for a minute and they broke. And I also had one out of a junkyard, which I know you should not do. But the typical person who, like, just the consumer of cars doesn't really know that. So they might actually try to put a junkyard PCM in their car. Basically, the problem with the OBD2 systems is that if you need a PCM, you can get another one, but you can't get a brand new one. They don't make a brand new one. So you're getting one that was in another vehicle built in the same year your car is, and that's how you get them. When you see them on eBay, they're reprogrammed, and if they don't work, they send you another one. So really the problem is the reason they don't make new ones is because, one, OBD is more complicated. OBD2 is more complicated. Kind of has to be put to your VIN number in order to work correctly. And two, there's so many variants that they just simply don't make new ones. They'd have to make too many different styles. Okay, so from that, it destroyed my sensors in my transmission. There's one sensor and there's two solenoids in the transmission. So what ends up happening is when they all go bad, you can't shift. And at first, you can't shift very well. You can't shift into overdrive. And then what happens is you just can't shift at all. It just stays in first. And then you can very easily ruin your transmission, because I actually drove it like about a mile back to my house. I'm not gonna pay for a tow truck, so I drove it, just very, very slowly in first all the way home. It's probably not a good idea, but that's then I had to change the sensors out. I kind of cheaped out on one because I was testing it on the bench and it tested exactly the same as the brand new one, so I just put the old one back in. Well, no, I had to go back in there and put it in there, put the new one back in. So that happened. Then I had a problem with the speedometer. Speedometer stops working intermittently, and something blew out when I had the wrong PCM in. So it's my fault, but still it happened. So the PCM kind of like blew out something. I think it's in the wiring, because I've changed the sensors. I had a spare speedometer that I put in just for a minute to see if it was working, and it was acting the exact same way. So it's got to be in the wiring somewhere. So when I get a chance to, I'm going to just take apart the wiring and then find out what's wrong there. And basically, these things are just like they're electronic. They're electronic. So this is not the old car that we're used to. And the old cars that are 30 years old are now technical. That's kind of like a different thing for America. America's always had this very, very simple old car. You could always revert to your old car. So I think that is the problem that we're facing in America right now. This car, you can modify things, you can change things, even if you're just using stock parts, because sometimes parts aren't available. You go to the junkyard or what have you, and you end up with a different manifold. You end up with different this and that. Even change an engine. Your engine goes bad. You had a 318. You looked out in front of a 340 or a 360 or whatever. Even go down to a slant 6. It's all basically the same. It's like you can put even a big block in this thing, and it's only like different motor mounts, really. Everything else just kind of goes right in. As far as your electronics and all that stuff, kind of just make some wires longer if you have to. And that's what we're used to in America. That's where we're used to the simplicity of just a car that is malleable. You can do whatever you want to it. This one, it's set up through the programming as to what transmission you have to use, even what year transmission you have to use, because the years change and it doesn't work anymore. The 5.9 has a different program than the 5.2. And what sucks about this car is that in the 90s, they never made a V8 car for, Chrysler. So all the Magnums were in a truck. So what that means is they're programmed to basically haul loads. Even the small ones. Basically, this thing is supposed to haul something behind it, plus have a full passenger load and luggage. And the PCM is programmed to handle that. So what that equates to is you get bad gas mileage. Even when you're just driving it, normally these old PCMs had one program, and it's not like the new days where you can have, like normal gas save mode and, track, whatever. And that's just how they are. So they're basically gas hogs. And it's too bad that, see, if this thing would just be smog exempt, even though you might live in a state where it's not like an annual smog, biannual smog, you still have a smog on the car. It's still, I don't really know how it works in some states. Probably just at transfer of ownership, or maybe not even at all. But it's still not smog exempt. The government doesn't see it as being smog exempt. You just simply don't have a smog that you have to biannually pass, okay? So if this was to go smog exempt, I think that there'd probably be new PCMs and things on the market that you could do to your car, but it's not. It's basically it has to have what it came with stock. And there's a couple things you can do, like change a cam and stuff like that. But other than that, you're stuck with what you got. And for the old cars on the road today, it's not that bad. Like, if you keep this thing in good condition, it'll drive for a long time. Especially, I have a little Honda Civic right here. That thing will drive forever. It's a manual, okay? And that's another thing too. I'm not looking for any of these vehicles, these Dakotas or Durangos. Well, Durango's never had a manual, but I'm only looking for a manual from now on, because I do not want to have problems from an automatic transmission. I just want to go manual, and that's it. But you're basically stuck with what you got, and it might be okay. It might even be good right now, because these things, when they're running good, they'll run forever. But one day, you're going to look in your driveway and you're going to see, you know, the current year, 2024, in your driveway, and it's going to be the old car. Okay? It's going to be the one that's 25 years old. And frankly, I'll fix this car, but no one's going to fix a 2024 when it's in this condition, okay? When it needs everything, it's gone. This thing right here, it should have been gone. It should have been put in the junkyard, except that I owned it. If I was having somebody fix this stuff for me, it would have cost a fortune. It probably would have been a couple $1,000, $4,000 or $5,000, especially to get into the wiring issues of the speedometer, because they can basically charge you hours of labor until they find it and that kind of thing. And then, are they honest? I mean, I hate to say it, but are they honest? So that's the problem that we're facing today, is that the old car in America is no longer an American old car. And the older cars are kind of play toys now. So what I recommend people do is, I know you want to have your new flashy car, and that's cool, you know, your new car, whether it's a Chrysler, a Dodge, even like a Mercedes-Benz, whatever. You should find something that you understand, something that's plentiful, and you should just have one or maybe two, and then understand the systems. Much as I hate it, this is the one I've picked, you know. I understand the systems, and just have one of these around. Even if you get a new car, you should just have your old car around to drive, because at the end of the day, even though it's a gas hog, this is better than paying for Ubers everywhere you go. It's cheaper than paying for Ubers, and frankly, this thing costs about $100 a month to insure, so you can't really beat it. So when people are trying to find something that's good and reliable for the long haul out of all these new cars that are being built, I think that people who are car people will scoop up anything that's in one piece. Like, you don't care what car it is, as long as it's complete. And maybe up until the early 80s, all those cool like Oldsmobiles and Monte Carlos and stuff like that. Doesn't matter how many doors it has. Doesn't matter how many how ugly it is. Whatever. As long as it's easy to get parts to and it's a complete car, I think that people will want to have them around. And I like 90s cars. I think people are going to start rebuilding 90s cars, and you'll have shops specializing in 90s cars rather than 60s cars, because there'll be more money in it. I actually would love to open a shop and just do Durangos, Dakotas, and Rams and stuff like that. That'd be awesome. But probably not going to do that. But I think it's going to be a thing in the future. So anyway, that's just my thought on the dilemma of America. Is eventually we're going to get to where the current year model is the old car, and it's going to really suck. If I was a billionaire, what I'd do is I would go and I would purchase one of these car brands that are like no longer in business. You know, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, you know, like find out who owns it and purchase it. Maybe, you know, Chrysler I'd love, but I don't even want to mention Chrysler right now. American Motors is the one I would want. American Motors, AMC, right? And then design new cars and make them like OBD1, because the general population isn't going to want a carburetor. So make them like OBD1, but super, super simple. But the problem is you'd have to manufacture them in like Mexico or Brazil or somewhere, because it's gotten so bad in America that you can't actually sell that car here anymore. It has to be up to par to all these regulations. But if you made them and sold them around the world, they would eventually trickle in. It's like you could buy a Volkswagen Bug off car lots in California up until about, like they were brand new, but they were selling them as used up until about, I don't know, 2006 or something like that. So anyway, just my thoughts, kind of rambling on a little bit. But yeah, that's our dilemma, is the old cars are getting too technical. Okay, have a good one.